Hey guys, welcome to today's video. I'm diving into something a little different today. I'm talking about AE86 and KE70 Corolla steering. I'm waiting for some bits on the dado, so I have a spare week here sort of thing while I'm waiting on a couple bits. So over time, I've had a few questions about this, right? I've spent years and years refining my Corolla steering setup, basically. I've tried many different things. Some work, some don't. So I'm going to go over today what works best, what setup I run in my car, share all my secrets with you. So today we have a donor car in here. So Jamie from GeForce Motorsport, he is spicing this thing up. So he just bought this car from, I think from Queensland, I believe. And it is an LS1 KE70, a bit rough around the edges, but yeah, Queensland light bar. So it is an LS, but it has some basic mods. So all I'm worried about today is, like I said, steering. And I'm going to just get a baseline to start with. So this car actually has a little bit of, a few modifications. It has some knuckles in it. Terrible knuckles. I'm not sure what knuckles they are. They look like slightly modified. I don't know, some variety of knuckles. There is lots of AE86 knuckles, AE86. There is lots of bolt patterns that suit AE86, so Corollas and stuff. I'll go over that in a minute. But this car does have adjustable caster rods in it. I'm not sure why people put adjustable caster rods in it, because you don't need to. It's a Corolla. It already has adjustable caster rods. Sometimes it just needs a little bit more caster. It has aftermarket tie rod ends or rack ends, and actually I think standard rack ends, maybe aftermarket tie rod ends. So I might change them out as well while I'm going. So yeah, pretty much what I do is I change out everything. So roll center adjusters. These are caster rods that I've modified. These are just, what's the part number? RB30 I think is the part number for the rack ends. So these are Cressida right-hand side rack ends. I can't remember the Cressida. We have I have an assortment of lock spaces here, some different lengths and whatnot. Depending on what rack's in this car, I'm not sure if it's an AE86 rack or a KE70 rack. Sometimes KE70 racks, you can run a little bit bigger spacer than an AE86 rack. AE86 racks naturally have more travel, so they are better. Yeah, with my setup, I think you can get away with KE70 racks with no problems. These are the control arms that I run. So these are all made by myself, notched, big boys. 65mm longer, so just a KE70 Corolla or AE86. There's not much difference between it. Basically, they're the same between the standard ones. So yeah, this is just a 65mm extended control arm with a big notch in them. Two sets there, painted and black. That's pretty much the gist of it, sort of thing in this case. Wheel choice and spacer options and stuff, that is something you can go into as well. I will go into that as well today. But yeah, for now, we've got a baseline. So I've just taped some marks on the floor. This is the lock that it has standard. So that is standard lock. Try and get a good shot of it. Now I'm saying standard lock. It is not standard lock because these are cut and shut knuckles already. Standard lock is a lot worse than that. But we are going to make some spicy knuckles fit. So, yep, before. So you can see these knuckles still have Ackerman in them. So 2-second rundown of what Ackerman is. Say your car is driving like that. Your front wheels, your inside wheel, will have more lock than your outside wheel. That's basically Ackerman. Zero Ackerman is when your front wheels have the same angle. So yeah, draws an arc while you're sliding. It draws an arc sort of thing. This will drag the wheel while you're sliding. this setup today is basically just for drifting only. So this is the steering it currently has. So you can see here it's got some like hard race or something. Are they hard race? Yeah. Caster arms, once again, I mean, it doesn't need these. The only upside to having these is they're rose jointed sort of thing. So there is just a little bit more movement in them. These won't go anywhere near short enough for what they need to be. You can see they're almost maxed out now. So I'm probably gonna have to take 15 mil out of this section. Possibly off the threads as well. I'm not sure about that yet. I'm not sure what control arms these are without pulling them out and measuring them. I'd imagine there's something like XT130 or something, which is about 15 mil longer than standard. Obviously it has a set of coilovers in it. It does have camber tops, so that is going to assist with us making some adjustments here. This knuckle, I don't know what this knuckle is yet. I presume it's an AE86 knuckle. It does have RX7 brakes on it, so that is something that we are going to have to tackle shortly, because brake clearance is actually a big a common issue here. So depending on what brakes and what offset knuckles and stuff you have, there is some variance here that you can have to play with. So like I was just saying before, so there is a different offset knuckle. So if you're looking at the line where it bolts to the strut compared to where it picks up on the ball joint, that is the offset that can change between Corollas and Celicas and stuff. So this is an 85 mil spacing bolt center. So between these two bolts on the knuckle, so that is AE86. KE70 is different again. So that is 87 mil, I believe. Nowadays you can get all of this stuff to suit K70s, because AE86 knuckles and stuff are pretty hard to come by these days. Not hard to come by, they're harder to find. They're definitely still out there. I personally have started using Corolla and Celica and stuff and all those sort of knuckles, because much of a muchness, you can get away with certain things. If it's something like this, I'll direct swap out what is in the car. So like if these are AE86 knuckles, I will in fact swap them out. If you're looking for what the difference is in them, I don't have that information right here. I don't have comparable knuckles, so if you're looking for them, probably AE86 Driving Club is the website is the forum to hit up. I think it's still live, and that does have some information about control arm length and steering knuckle spacing and stuff like that sort of thing. Today, obviously, I'm dealing with AE86 stuff, not K70. So obviously, it is in a K70, but it is not K70 steering stuff. It is AE86. So once again, bolt straight in. So K70, A71. I don't know actually which ones changed through there. So K70 has a smaller strut diameter, 45 mil, I think, 40 something like that, 44, 45. And it also has a smaller brake, and you can't swap brakes. You probably could if you got creative, but the hubs are different to A86 hubs. So you're limited with K70 stuff what you can do. There's millions of brake upgrades. All right, not millions. There's lots of brake upgrades for A86 hubs and stubs and stuff. Like I said, hence this has RX7 brakes on it, so I'm going to say it's probably got AJPS, the old school brake adapters. It does have a few AJPS bits in here. It's got hard race trailing arms in it, AJPS. Panhard rod adjustable. It does have divorced springs and shocks still. So I feel like I'm going off on a tangent here. Yeah, so anyway, get back into it. So something to take into account here is this cross member has probably a 25 mil spacer. This is probably just an off-the-shelf, maybe KE conversions kit. I haven't had a look what engine mounts and stuff are in here. But yeah, I'm guessing so, because I think they come with spacers in some of their kits. So what I'm doing today with the roll center adjusters is you correct the angle of the control arm there. So basically you can imagine with this car under load, it's going to get bump steer because that control arm there will sit like higher than it should with the car being lower. So pretty much what I'm going to do is we're going to put some new knuckles in it. I'm going to put new control arm in it. I'm probably just going to shorten these caster rods. I am going to go through the difficult procedure of pulling out that cross member, and I'm going to move the rack forward as much as I possibly can, so 25 to 30 mil, depending on what else is set up on there and what room we have. So yeah, coilover staying, brakes staying, like I said, different knuckles, roll center adjusters, these tie rod ends and these tie rod ends. I'm not sure what brand they are, but the rose joints, see, like they're almost binding on that angle. So I'm probably going to, my knuckles that I make, they actually bring this, the angle around of this. So I'm probably going to swap them out for my brand of factory Toyota, so to speak. So these are just AE86/KE70 tie rod ends, and the rack ends are just, yeah, like I said, Cressida. So just for now, enough talking, I'm gonna rip into getting all this stuff out basically. So wheels off, I'll leave coilovers and brakes in. I'm just gonna pull out cross member, and all of this basically is just gonna come out, and then we'll pick back up here. She's all out, all the bits and pieces. I've got a better look at it now. Definitely got some different control arms in it, possibly Corolla, like I said. It actually has lock spaces already, which is surprising because it didn't really have that much lock. So that saves me one job, but there is some things I want to change. Plenty of buts here. Once again, it has one of these slip-on rack spaces. I don't like running them. So it's just a 5mm rack spacer that goes on the end of your driver's side rack in this case. So between your rack end and your actual rack. But what I like to do is I actually take 5mm out of this. So basically the lock spacer will be built into this. So I just machine a step into this. So I'll do that. Obviously this is not the one that I'm using, right? But yeah, I like to do that so that it has more thread into the rack. You can imagine here, you get 5mm out of that. Yeah, 5mm less thread on there. There's not a lot of thread in that rack. You know what I mean? Like, that's all the thread. See? That's all the thread that's actually screwing in. So you got 5mm of thread, if you're lucky, in that rack. So yeah, not good. So I like to machine those bad boys down as a built-in lock spacer. A little bit harder to get replacement parts because you have to get a part, machine it, so you can't do it at the track unless you have spares, sort of thing. But touch wood, I've never bent one in the whole time that I've drifted. So I've had plenty of crashes and whatnot. So what else did I find? So the next problem is going to be engine clearance. You can see this little notch. I'm not sure what's going on there. I think it's welded. Might be JB welded, don't know. Like I said, Jamie bought this car from Queensland and he literally hasn't driven it yet. So he's just given it to me to do the knuckles and steering in and sort that out, and he's actually driving it this week. So he wanted to, yeah, get on top of the steering on it because, so his mate drove it the other week and it looked like a bit of a handful to drive, to be honest. It had lock, don't get me wrong, but it was not usable lock sort of things. So this is the modified knuckle out of the car. You can see where the pickup point is for the tie rod end and everything, and this is the one that I make. Excuse the ugly welding, it is strong. Yeah, so you can see the difference in that there, and that's where that extra 20 degrees of lock comes from, basically. So there is a couple downsides to this, like I said. Brake clearance, and I mean, most of it just revolves around brake clearance. This should be an issue though. I've had a couple measurements on it and it'll be close, but I think it'll be fine. So yeah, I'm gonna clean all this up, chop 25mm out of this bad boy and move that rack mounting position forwards on the rack. So we're going to gain some room there. If you don't know why you do that, it is to decrease bind, basically. I will explain it more when I get it back in the car, but basically you can imagine the center line of the rack sort of thing. If you move this point on where the tie rod end bolts on too far forwards, you'll get to a certain point there, and this, which is tight as heck. All right, this gets to a point and then it goes loose, basically because the point between there and there, it's over centering. So basically by moving that forward, you move that pivot point forward, and yeah, you won't get that bind in here sort of thing. Like I said, I'll explain it more when I get it back in the car, but for now, let's chop some of that. So out with the old and in with the new. So this is everything. I still have to put new ball joints in the lower control arms, but roll center adjusters, all of the rack ends and tie rod ends. I haven't machined that bit yet. I've got that on there, so I remember to do it. But yeah, relocated rack. So you can see we've moved it forwards in the car, 25mm. It's actually probably closer to 28mm because it's 25 plus like the cutting disc each side. So that's the bit that I cut out, those two bits. So yeah, probably closer to 30mm that I cut out of it. So yeah, now I've got to go ahead and get all of this bolted back in. Like I said, the main bit here is going to be the cross member moving forward. Does the rack still clear the LS sump? That's just the one bit that I'm wondering whether it's going to work. I actually added some holes to this cross member. When I dropped or when I undid the engine mounts, you can't get to them like at all with the LS in there. Headers are in the way, like battery cables are in the way, just everything in general. So I actually drilled a hole pretty much right there, so you can actually just get a small extension through, like a 3/8 extension. So that should make Jamie's life easier, hopefully. This car's actually been built pretty well, I think. It's got all pretty good parts on it, to be honest. So yeah, like you can tell it's home built, but most of the stuff on it is pretty good. So yeah, that makes my life easier. Also cleaned up, yeah, a little bit on the, this was just like hacked out sort of thing. So I just hit that with the flapper wheel and cleaned her up a bit. Yep, let's get her in. own business here. Everything is bolted back in. I have eye aligned it. I'll go over some alignment settings in a minute, but I'm going to go through everything that I've done and try and explain a bit of the ideas and stuff behind everything. So I've been modifying knuckles for probably 10 years, I'd say. My first set of modified knuckles I had in my car were actually Keto steering systems from NZ. So Todd sent me some over, and that kind of fueled my ideas and stuff. And from then, basically, I've just been modifying knuckles and coming up with like my own design sort of thing since then. To where I've got to the point where I like what's in my car now. I'm comfortable saying that it is the most lock you would get out of a AE or KE steering setup. So like obviously it's still like manual steering, everything. I like the feel of it. I don't like S13. I don't like the feel of S13 steering. It is a bit heavier having this setup, right? It's not like this originally had like small cut and shut knuckles in it, and yeah, everything pretty standard sort of thing, and it had pretty light steering. It's not going to have light steering while you're like rolling through the pits or, you know what I mean, moving slowly. But it is going to steer mint where it matters. So this is almost zero Ackerman. It's not quite zero. Like if you remember earlier in the video, I was talking over, this is the car, this is the steering. If like in a standard car, small arc, bigger arc, good for doing U-turns, zero Ackerman, good for drifting. So I like a little bit of Ackerman so that it drags one wheel a bit. In Corollas, gives you that like snappiness, that really aggressive driving, which is what I love about Corollas basically. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about what I've done. So I guess to start with, roll center adjusters, reduce bump steer. Bump steer is basically, you can imagine without that in there, this arm, like in a lowered car, this bottom arm would be sitting flat sort of thing. Therefore, this would also be sitting like almost pointing up. Bump steer is when you are driving along and all your angles are out on your front steering, like your lower control arms and your tie rod ends and stuff, and you hit a bump and the tie rod angle changes basically. So you'll gain or lose toe as you're going over bumps because everything's so like, yeah, stressed sort of thing, like at its maximum adjustment or at its maximum angle, I should say. But yeah, that's what bump steer is. Hit a bump and your steering changes. So that's what the RCA corrects. I have got these from Beam Speed Shop, as I said. They do 50mm RCAs also. Like 50mm probably would have worked in this, to be honest, but I just wasn't sure. Before I started, like you obviously have to allow for clearance and everything. So you can imagine if like this section of the steering dropped another 10mm, you'd start getting pretty close to rims and stuff. And I wasn't sure what the go was. And Jamie is driving this tomorrow, so I need to have it rocking and rolling ready to go today. So had a pretty short timeline and I didn't want to run out. Ooh, that's loose, that's not ideal. I haven't put the rack boots on yet because I'm going to show you what I have done. So like I said, this is like extreme Corolla steering. Like this is the bee's knees, I would say, in my opinion. So obviously the big notches are to clear everything. And if you go down here, you can kind of have a look at the angle of the lower control arms because they have all of the caster. So like I said, I'll go over wheel alignment specs in a minute, but yeah, you can get the idea that she's a pretty aggressive setup. So yeah, obviously my knuckles, this is probably the 20th version of these, and I have been running these for about 4 or 5 years maybe. I'd have to think about that. And yeah, I've had a real good run with them. The only downside to them is how aggressive they are. They run into some clearance issues on some brake setups. This is a RX-7 brake setup on this car. They do clear most brakes. Like I have a big Willwood set up on the front of mine, and it didn't clear to start with because there was multiple reasons. I got one of the first like Big Daddy T3 kits that they made. I ordered the smaller brake kit and then they said, oh, did I want to try one of these? So they sent one over and I chucked it in and it didn't fit with RCAs. So I had to modify the bracket and caliper mount and stuff, and it worked out all right because I ended up running a lot of spacer to get some scrub radius out of my car. I like that feeling. Gives it a bit more stability at full lock. But yeah, so this car has decent scrub radius now because I have put a 30mm bolt-on spacer in there, mainly for clearance. But like I said, in my opinion, in these Corollas, I do like a bit of scrub radius because it gives it some stability at like angle, and yeah, like it helps. Yeah, I like having a little bit of extra track on the front, put it that way. So it's just what I've come up with in my time of driving, and obviously I've done a lot of Corollaing. So once again, my opinion, it may or may not be different to everybody else's. Also, yeah, like I said, yeah, the clearance is the big thing here, right? This is what 65mm longer lower control arms are for. Obviously the big notch in there is for some of that angle. This is pretty close. Like I can take a little bit of caster out of this, but I like to have that full self-center. So if you don't know, caster is for self-center steering. So you could like turn in and start drifting, and pretty much in this setup in my car, you can almost just like let go of the steering wheel and just drive with the throttle sort of thing, and it'll like mungy. Yeah, that is probably one of my favorite things about the Corolla. Chassis and everything is how aggressive you can have the steering in them, and yeah, drive it full noise, full angle, snappy as, and they're nice little nimble cars. So, all right, what else? So yeah, caster, self-centering. Also, in this setup, I'll explain it in a sec, right? So you can see I've obviously moved that rack forwards, and I have a nice angle on my tie rod in here, and she's crammed in there. You can imagine without that 30mm bolt-on spacer, it would be a whole lot tighter, and I'd have a whole lot less clearance. But you can see here that if I turn this side wheel, that side wheel turns easily. So if I take this lower control arm back, so wind some caster out of it so that brings that arm back, this would almost start to bind. It doesn't, but bind is basically when that tie rod end doesn't have tension on it, sort of thing. So you can imagine, right, if you draw a straight line through here, I think I covered it the other day, you don't want that to over center, basically. So if I take caster out of that and move that control arm back, you start to get a little bit of bind in there, but you have to take a fair bit of caster out of it. So toe out, I run a fair bit of toe out in these. Once again, it's a Corolla. Toe out gives you that nice aggressive steering, and also helps with that wheel drag. Like with Ackerman, say if you're running a zero Ackerman setup, you can run a bit of toe out and it'll give you that wheel drag, and it'll help you have a bit snappier driving and yeah, a bit more aggressive steering sort of setup. Camber, once again, obviously longer lower control arms. So the idea of that is 90% of it's for clearance. There's a small portion of it, better contact patch on the road when you are at full lock, and also like helps with a bit of turn in, but like most of it is, like I run Demon camber on my car, and most of the reason is for clearance. So I run, like I said, a bigger scrub radius too on my car than this. These are probably 0 offset 8s with 30mm bolt-ons. I run 0 offset 8s on the front of my car with 55mm of bolt-on spacers. So like I said, it's just the steering that I like. I can go full lock, full noise, and then have an aggressive transition and be full lock and full noise, and it'll just sit there. And I find if I take those bolt-ons off and have a little less like track on the front, I'll start to lose that ability to hold full throttle for a longer period sort of thing. And it starts to like over center and spin. Once again, this is just what I've discovered in the many, many moons of Corolla driving. Are you sick of hearing me dribble about Corolla stuff? Because I could probably talk about this for far too long. So let's dive into some wheel alignment specs, right? So I have set this car up eye-aligned, but when I say eye-aligned, I mean I have measured it with a tape measure, eye-aligned it. I mean, my eyes have wheel-aligned a few cars, so they're pretty good at guessing stuff. So the specs that I like to run, a lot of camber. So like I said, mainly for clearance and other reasons, but My camber is, to be honest, it's about -7, so -7 degrees camber, fair bit, right? And you always, I think a good rule of thumb is like 2 degrees more, 2 degrees, 10 plus 2, 2 degrees more caster. So basically, if you've got -7 camber, I like to go with 9 degrees of caster, something like that, in that ballpark. Or in most cases, I like to wind all of the caster into the caster rod possible. Caster is your friend in Corollas. So yeah, my car, -7 degrees camber and about 9 degrees caster. 15 to 20 mil tow out. Like I said, the tow out, I wouldn't go less than 10, definitely not in a Corolla, in my opinion. With this setup as well, you lose that aggressive turn in. You can imagine if you're running a zero Ackerman setup and you take all the tow out of the car, when you turn in, it kind of just, I'll go back to my drawing on the floor. Yeah, you obviously lose that small circle and big circle. So if you can imagine you're driving in a straight line and you just turn, your front wheels do not like to turn. So that's what that tow out gives you, that little bit of turn in, especially in a Corolla, because I like to have a very aggressive setup once again. Have I talked about everything? Probably not. Kingpin angle, I'm not really going to touch on that. Doesn't change. That depends on what struts you've got. If you don't know what kingpin angle is, it's basically the strut to the stub axle sort of thing, like the angle on that. That obviously can affect what it steers like at full lock and stuff. And the only problem you ever really have with them is if you're in something like this, if you're bumping cars hard, like drifting, and you're banging their doors and stuff, you can actually bend that kingpin angle on these struts pretty easy. And like I said, they are a one-piece like coilover. They're not like so it's obviously like a welded on stub. They're not like a Sylvia. Geez, I am rambling. Am I talking too much? I tell you what though, if anyone has any questions, let me know. I can probably answer most things Corolla related. It's hard to compare everyone's setups. That's why I'm telling you what I run, sharing all my secrets. But yeah, it is hard to compare what everyone runs, right? So like this car come in with longer control arms and it had modified knuckles in it, but it felt like it had standard lock, to be honest. I've driven Corollas with standard lock, standard steering setup sort of thing, just with longer control arms and a rack spacer, and it felt very similar to this, to be honest. So yeah, this is full kill. This is next level steering. So I also, I might just touch on a few other things on this 45-minute video. So I have left in these hard race caster rods. To be honest, there is positives and negatives, I think, of this. Positive, easily adjustable, rose jointed, so there is no like bind of any description in that compared to a rubber mount, which the like standard caster rod would have. Downsides, doesn't have as much adjustability, is weaker, definitely. So I like to run the trusty old standard, just the Corolla, obviously standard caster rod with some extra thread tapped onto there, or ran a die over that, put some more thread on it. Reason I like them, easily adjustable. You can run as little or as much caster as you like, although this bad boy is shortened about 30 mil. You can run as little as much as you like with that setup. This, obviously, you only have a certain amount of adjustability in there. Like I said, I have wheel line this to about the same specs of 9 degrees of caster that I run in the Corolla, like in my car, because, like I said, he's going driving tomorrow and he needs it to drive good tomorrow, so I just made sure it's all good to go. So I still need to go over this and just mark everything, double check, bolt everything, and make sure everything's marked and not going to rattle loose. What else I didn't talk about? Rack spacers. So this bad boy, this is a KE70 rack. I run an AE86 rack in my car. The difference is, I think there's 1 or 2 more teeth on an AE86 rack. This here is, I'm pretty sure it's an AJPS lock spacer, or very similar to the otherwise. And this here is mine. This is ones that I make up. You can see if I put that back to back on that bad boy, there's about an extra 10 mil on that. These knuckles don't actually need the full travel of that, but I do like to have it just in case. So yeah, I like to run that extra 10 mil on these KE70 racks. They do have it, so A86 racks have like a physical stop, like you can't turn it too fast sort of thing. But this thing you can just wind and wind and wind and then eventually pull that rack out basically. And yeah, so I've kind of sat that in the right spot where it's still like engaged by a couple teeth. Yeah, and I like measured it and everything and worked it all out. This is my trick on the other end. You can see I have gotten rid of that lock spacer because once again, if you remember at the start of this video, there was about 2 threads in it, right? Don't like that. So I've machined a little stepperoo into this tire end, or this rack end. And I have cut these rack ends open to see whereabouts the like ball sits sort of thing, and there's still plenty of purchase in there sort of thing. So yeah, I much rather do that and have full purchase in that thread rather than just, you know, having a slip-on spacer and then 2 threads hanging in. Yeah, not stoked on that. Yeah, so like I said, everything else. The Cressida, rack ends, stock Corolla tire ends like AE86, KE, order KE stuff because for some reason AE86 stuff, even though it's exactly the same, is more expensive. Put new ball joints in it. She's pretty much good to go here. So I relocated some brake lines. It's got some questionable brake lines in it from when it got built, but yeah, so I just put some P-clips on it. There was a little dooflackies there, the standard 90-degree brake line brackets, so chopped them off, relocated and chopped the guard as you've seen before. It is ugly. Jamie's going to have to suss out some flares or something at some stage. To be honest, he's probably just going to drive it for a little bit maybe because he's got a few events coming up with it. That's why he wants it dialed. What else did I do? Shortened this bad boy. So that's a sump guard. Obviously I moved the rack forwards. I had to chopperoo that out, take 30 mil of that out as well. And I did end up taking 30 mil out of that cross member. Everything else looks pretty good. So I've been over and fixed a few things on this that, yeah, I didn't think would have need doing, but yeah, I just didn't want to leave it sort of thing. So like I said, it is good to go. So let's drop this bad boy on the ground. Like I said, if you have any questions, holler, leave a comment below. I'll get back to you when I get a minute. I'm busy, very busy, so don't stress if it's a week's time or something. I'm trying to keep up with it all. So yeah, Corolla stuff, like I said, KE, AE, there is a million different model numbers of this. K70, K71, K72, A71, A70, is it A72? I don't know. A85, A86, T71, T72, is there a T70? There's many different things. All the steering, very similar. I don't think T18, I think T18's got a steering box, but like control arms and you know, knuckles and stuff. Most of them are very similar, like I said. K70 definitely has the 87mm bolt spacing, and I'm rambling again. Let's drop it on the ground and listen to me talk about Corolla stuff for 40 minutes. Yeah. All right, this view might show better than before, but you can see this is the Ackerman that I was talking about. So more lock, so small circle when it turns, less lock, so bigger circle when it turns. That is probably mostly through the tow out that I've got in the car. So like I said, 15 to 20 mil. But yeah, this is what I think makes the Corolla chassis drive really good, is having that little bit of aggressive flick and stuff when you transition. But what do you reckon? Enough lock? Not bad. She's all done. So I just quickly went over my before and after on the lock. So this line here, obviously track increase, so dark green old, light green new, so fair track increase, and full lock before, full lock after, trailing wheel, full lock previous. So you can see she's spiced up a bit now. Don't worry about the hack job on the guards, right? I've literally made it fit for now, and then Jamie's going to work something out with that afterwards, whether it's bolt-on flares or some metal guards or something. I believe it's going to get a makeover possibly soon anyway. So yeah, instructions were make it work. I've always been a firm believer. If you want a car like this to steer right, you build the car to steer right, and then you like build the body around it. So even if you did something like this, build it with the guards off, then fit the guards and make it work and make it look good afterwards. Yeah, you know what I mean? It needs to work. But that might just be my opinion, but in my experience, that's how it works. So same thing again. Obviously these tape marks aren't perfect, but you can get the idea. Track increase, old lock, dark green, new lock. I should actually measure how much that is. It's a fair bit, I reckon. Not 90 degrees, obviously, but we don't need 90 degrees where we're going. So yeah, that's going to be it for today's video. Like I said earlier, if you've got any questions on this, drop a comment below, let me know. I'll get back to you at some stage. All this is just my opinion as well. I've been playing Corolla for far too long. Yeah, so it is, once again, all of this information that I have is just stuff that I physically have dealt with or have done myself. So first-hand experience, that's all this information is. So if there is, I might have got some things wrong, like part numbers and stuff like that, but hey, nobody's perfect. Let us know what you think of the video. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button. Obviously, this is going to appeal to my Corolla followers more than anyone. But yeah, I've been meaning to do this for quite a while, and this was the perfect time to do it. So thanks for watching, everyone. We'll see you next week.